Yes, that's right.
Uh,
So, uh, Krishna, any offenses at his
hmm.
own or towards Krishna, Krishna may still forgive, but anything committed against the devotees,
Hmm.
Krishna doesn't tolerate. And there are so many stories with respect to this in the scriptures. And yes, Krishna took Arjuna in between the two armies and in front of his teachers so as to understand, whom he was going to fight. Yes. Any
Hmm.
other points you'll recall from previous class?
May I?
Yes, please.
Yes. It was mentioned Arjuna has a very soft heart. He's very compassionate. It went to a level that he had tears in his eyes. He
Hmm.
was choosing principles over pleasure. He was not happy that he would get kingdom, knowing that he would win, but still he was not ready for that. And then he also explained us the eagle and one minute, the kangaroo policy,
Kangaroo. Hmm.
like how the kangaroo carries the baby in the pouch. That was example. Two people were invited, Shakuni Mama and
Krishna.
one more person.
Krish.
No, yeah. From the
Okay.
kangaroo side, it was Shakuni Mama, and the eagle side, it was Lord Krishna. So what Lord Krishna did is he would put them, like as Dhanvanti said, they were placed in that
Hmm.
situation. He would guide them, and they would come out victorious because they would listen to Lord Krishna. And also, it was mentioned that till the time you're following materialism, complete materialism, you're not taking into Krishna consciousness. There's Durga Devi, she holds the trident, which is the three
Hmm.
Trishul, that is the
Trishul.
Sattva, Rajas, and Tamagun. And but when we not opt, sorry, when we surrender to Lord Krishna, he takes over. So our account is transferred from there to here. Yeah, he
Okay.
And
takes charge.
yeah, and one more
Okay.
thing, it we discussed
Before you all
that.
finish all the points between the two of you all, I would like to give the opportunity to
Okay,
everyone
okay, okay.
else to say.
You were
But
excited.
just to reflect on what Priya Mataji said, she said, uh, Arjuna had this wonderful quality of, compassion. Uh, and, you know, so my question to everyone is, wha- how is it that Arjuna had this quality of compassionate nature? There was something else also mentioned about this. Do you all recall anything?
May I?
Yes,
If
yes.
if I remember, I think it was all the devotees because of Krishna's blessing we get that compassion, in us.
Yeah.
Because he was a great devotee of Krishna, so that's why he was any which ways a very compassionate because he was always with Krishna and great devotee of Krishna.
Yeah, that is what I was looking for. So that's the verse from the Srimad Bhagavatam. Yasyasti bhaktir bhagavati rakinchana sarvair gunastatra samasate sura harava bhaktasya kuto mahadguna manorathena sati dhavato bahi. So, which means that the devotees of the Lord, they automatically develop all good qualities of the demigods. So, one doesn't have to separately endeavor to develop all those good qualities. Any devotee for that matter will have all those good qualities. And because Arjuna was a great devotee, he was so close to Krishna, he was in fact Krishna's friend. He automatically had all these good qualities in him. And it's not that because he was weak hearted, that's why he did not want to fight. Rather, because he had these devotional qualities, and that is the reason why Arjuna was thinking. And we'll see more of that in today's verses also. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Shailja Mataji, very nicely recalled. Have you made notes or it's from your memory?
Actually, I was listening to the same lecture.
Oh, okay.
So I re-listened it few like almost 4 5 hours back. So that's why I remember it.
Wonderful, wonderful. I mean, this is like our, own personal self-study. So we just
Yeah.
don't, come for our weekly session, but it's trying to understand it properly. Because this is a small point probably mentioned in the whole class, but you picked it up. It's very, very good.
Thank
Any
you.
other points? Thank you. Any other points anyone would like to share?
Sir, two words like BMW, don't drive BMW, and BCID.
Yeah. What is that? What is BMW?
BMW is blame more worst, and CID is what can I do now?
Blame, mourn, and weep.
Yeah, blame more than means I didn't heard
Mourn
the.
and weep. Weep.
Okay.
Yeah. So, which is so uh, two dispositions we might have when we are in trouble. Either we can blame people, moan about it, and weep eventually, or what was the other one? What is the other acronym?
EID. That can I? What can
What
I
can
do
I
now?
do now? Yeah, what can I do now? Right. So yes, that is also very wonderful. So instead of blaming the situation, I think one of you all also mentioned towards the end in the previous class about how we should not look uh, at difficulties coming to us and blame people. Oh, this is the person because of whom this happened to me. I think so there was someone who was mentioning this last week in during the reflection time, and that was a very wonderful point. So yes, that is how devotees look at it. They don't actually blame a person, uh, or they in fact look that this is the Lord's mercy. This person who is causing this distress to me is only an instrument. He's only a medium to actually causing me this. So he looks at the overall situation. Okay, and Vijay Madhav Prabhu also shared how it said, hate the sin, not the sinner. Right? That's an important principle we should all learn, and try and follow. Okay, thank you. Wonderful point again. Any other points you all recall from previous class? Okay, so in the previous few verses that we had seen, we saw how Arjuna is asking Krishna to take him in between the army, and Krishna takes a chariot in between. And as soon as he sees that he has to fight his own relatives, his own brothers, his own grandfather, his own teacher, so all of his relatives, they are there on the other side. And immediately, Arjuna, he starts feeling different symptoms in his body. His body is burning. The Gandiva, Prabhuji described wonderfully, how the Gandiva was slipping from his shoulders, which would, which was very unlike Arjuna. So all of these symptoms were there. And then I think towards the end, what was discussed in the previous verse was the reasons that Arjuna was giving to not fight. Do you all recall any of the reasons what Arjuna gave to not fight?
Own acharyas were there. His own
Yes.
acharyas were there, against whom he was supposed to fight.
Okay.
Acharya and
Acharyas are there.
Pushpa, they were there, so he didn't want to fight. His own relatives were there, the brothers were there, so that was one of the reasons he didn't want to fight.
He did not want to fight because his own relatives were there.
And
That's
was
right.
not interested in the kingdom, of achieving the kingdom and have the pleasure of ruling the kingdom.
Correct. So he did not want the kingdom either. He said, why should I, for the sake of kingdom, kill all of these
And then he should fight.
people who are my own relatives? And what will I do even if I gain the kingdom? Just
Right.
like, you go to purchase a house. What is the first thing that one does when he purchases the house? Let's say you bought a new house, beautiful bungalow. What is the first thing that you do after you purchase the bungalow?
do a puja.
You do a puja. After that,
He won't be able to enjoy it.
You're going to furnish the apartment.
yeah, let's say all of that is ready. Puja is done.
Housewarming.
You need
Then
members in the family.
Housewarming party.
Housewarming. You call
Housewarming, that
people,
is
you call
what I
your
was looking
relatives.
for.
Yeah.
Housewarming.
Graha Pravesh.
So you can imagine. So why do people do housewarming? Because people want to show, see, I have such a wonderful house, and then people will bring other gifts. So Arjuna's point is that if I kill all of these people, I'll get the kingdom. Whom will I show and share this kingdom with? Because that's a natural tendency, right? You purchase a house, you want to share your opulence or your happiness with others and show people around, But if everyone whom I'm going to earn, gain this kingdom for, everyone is going to be dead on the other side. Like gain this kingdom for? You can imagine the situation. That is what his Arjuna's argument was. I don't want this kingdom, at the cost of my relatives. Rather, I'll die. Okay, that's one of the reasons what he gave. Yes. Any other reason
He
you recall?
also said that
For
if I
benefit,
kill my
he will
own,
get by uh, by killing the relatives.
Sorry, what is that?
He'll be committing sin. Huh?
He'll be committing sin. Yes, that is an important point. He said that we will be committing sin by killing these aggressors. Although aggressors, there's so many kinds as described, 6 kinds of aggressors. But Arjuna did not want to kill them, again, because of his devotional nature. Generally, there would be no wrong in killing such aggressors. Everyone remembers what are the 6 kinds of aggressors that are there? They're mentioned in the purport. So someone who gives poison, someone who sets fire on someone's house, someone who plunders riches, someone who kidnaps a wife or insults a wife, right? And then someone who attacks with deadly weapons. In fact, if you see all of these, everything was done to Pandavas. Their wife was insulted. Their kingdom they wanted to usurp. Then they were given poison. Bhima was given poison. So all of these kinds that are there for aggressors, everything was done to Pandavas. Despite that, Arjuna is saying that I don't want to kill. So it's not one of these things that was done. All of these, if you see, it was done to Pandavas. So they were trying to burn also. The house was, there was an attempt
Put
to burn
on fire.
Put on fire. That was also done. So all the 6 categories, the types of aggressors, everything was done against the Pandavas. Yet Arjuna is thinking that let us not, kill them. So sin will overcome us. That is one reason he gave. That's right. So compassion was the first thing. Then second he said was, we will not enjoy. Whom will we enjoy the kingdom with if we kill them? So that was the second reason he gave. Compassion, then enjoyment, and then sin. Sin will overcome us if we kill them. Okay, thank you. That was a wonderful discussion and wonderful recap of the previous session. So we will go ahead and discuss from verse number 37, if I'm not wrong, right? 36 is what we completed last night. Okay.
Right, 36.
36 we completed. So I'll just present my screen and we'll discuss 37 onwards. Okay, are you all able to see?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll recite. You can try and repeat. Yadyepe etana pashyanti lobo pahata chetasaha kulashaya kritam dosham mitra drohe cha patakam
Mitradohe cha patakam
katham na geyam asmabhi
katham nagamastavi
papadasman nivartitum
papadasman nivarditum
kulashaya kritam dosham
kulashaya kritam dosham
prapasyadbhir janardana
tapasate jardardhana.
Okay. Someone read the translation.
Should I read?
Yes, please.
Oh Janardana, although these men, their hearts overtaken by greed, see no fault in killing one's family or quarreling with friends, why should we, who can see the crime in destroying a family, engage in these acts of sin?
Yes. So Arjuna is saying, oh Janardhan, all of these people who are fighting, you're ready to fight with us here, they are overtaken by greed. And therefore they see no fault in killing one's own family and friends. But we are not like that. We can see that our family is going to be destroyed, and that's a big thing. Why should we engage in these acts of sins? That is what Arjuna is asking Krishna. Now, an important point here is lobha pahata chetasaha. So this word here, so lobha means greed. So pahata chetasa, which means these people, the Kauravas, are actually overtaken by greed. Now, someone may wonder that, as we mentioned, there are so many kinds of aggressors, and Pandavas had to suffer so much. And despite suffering so much, despite, Draupadi being insulted and so many attempts at their lives, yet Arjuna was feeling like, I should not, we should not do this, engage in this battle, not unnecessarily kill people, unnecessarily kill our relatives. But there was no one from the Kauravas side, specifically amongst the brothers, Duryodhana and Pati, who thought that actually we should not do this battle. Why is it? Why do you think that none of them actually thought like Arjuna did? Any idea? The clue is in this verse itself.
Because of the greed in their hearts.
Correct. Because of the greed in their hearts. So, which means, in the Bhagavad Gita, we'll see in the later chapters, it's described there are three doors or three gateways to hell. Lust, anger, and greed. Now, of course, there are 6 impurities that are further described: lust, anger, greed, envy, pride, illusion, and madness. But in this verse, particularly, it talks about greed. So, what was a greed for the Kauravas? The Kauravas, Duryodhan wanted the whole kingdom. He did not want to compromise at all in this regard. In fact, when Krishna went, as Shanti Dut, he asked that, please just forget the kingdom, just give the Pandavas 5 villages to rule, because the Kshatriyas, they need to rule. So just give them 5 villages. They'll be happy with that. And Duryodhan said, for what to speak of, 5 villages, I'll not even give that much land on which to keep a needle. So, in other words, he was envious and he was greedy for the whole kingdom. He did not want to give anything to the Pandavas at any cost.
5 villages.
Sorry?
Even 5 villages are not willing to give.
Exactly. Even 5 villages, they were not willing. So, a person who is actually overcome by envy, greed, lust, he actually cannot take the right decision. Or in other words, his decisions are actually tainted with those qualities. And although he may feel that the decision that I'm taking is actually the most appropriate, it's the most reasonable, it's the most logical, it's the most rational decision that I'm taking, but he does not realize that what he's taking, the decision that he's taking is actually not the right decision, but it's actually tainted with qualities like greed, envy, and lust. So now my question to you all is, what do you all think should we do when we take decisions in our life? Do we think that we are free from all of these impurities, or we also to a certain extent are tainted with all of these qualities?
May I?
Yes.
I think it was mentioned in one of the previous class, the power of choice, that
Right.
anything, wherever we are stuck, we should decide on whether our decision is taking towards Krishna or away from Krishna consciousness. Then we are able to make the right decision.
That's wonderful. So yes, we should base ourselves, our decisions, whether it's taking us towards Krishna or away from Krishna. And yet there might be times that there might be a confusion. Sometimes you might feel that what the decision that I'm taking is right, because what happens is the mind plays an important role. And we'll see in the later chapters that actually the mind of a person that is controlled, the mind acts like a friend. For others, it'll act like an enemy. So the mind, directs our activities. So it's very important, therefore, that whenever we take major decisions in our life, that we may always consult someone senior to us in spiritual life, who can see and very easily distinguish between what's right and what's wrong. In other words, what's really tainted with greed? Is it really greed that I'm actually taking this decision based upon, or this is a pure desire, free from greed, envy, pride, and so on, like that. So if there is someone higher than us in our understanding, then we may also always consult, with them. Apart from that, as we saw in the previous verses, that all good qualities automatically develop in a devotee. So when we actually take to the process of Krishna consciousness, like when we engage in a daily way, on a daily basis, in the practice of, say, mantra meditation, then automatically these impurities like greed, envy, pride, lust, anger, and so on will get vanquished from our hearts. They'll slowly and gradually get erased. Does anyone feel here that he's free from all these impurities? Or do all of you agree that we have these impurities? Maybe not to a very large extent, but to a certain extent, at least it's all there. How many of you feel these impurities are there? Can you raise your hands so I get an idea? Or if there are any pure devotees here, we can understand that also.
Little bit.
Okay, only one person feels they have impurities, not the others.
But I think
No, even I raise my
I
hand.
think
We
by
all have
participating,
impurities.
Okay, I was
We
looking for the
all have.
virtual hands. I was not looking at the video. I'm sorry. Okay, now I can
I
see.
was by participating in this Krishna consciousness, we are trying to erase our impurities and correct ourselves.
Right.
All those
So,
people who are there in this group, it's for that.
wow, that's a wonderful way to look at it. Yes. So all of us have impurities in our heart. In fact,
Yeah.
Unfortunately, in today's modern education system, this is what is kept aside. You are given education for what? For building your skills to earn a living, but you never educated to remove all these impurities from your heart. And that is why Bhagavad Gita is so scientific. And sometimes people think that, oh, this is some old Vedic literature. How is it relevant today? No, unless it's not relevant, you can see, because people are filled with impurities in their heart, like greed. There will always be, wars. Why? Because a certain country wants to extend its boundaries. Greed, right? Envy. So this is the most practical science, in fact, right? So the process of Krishna consciousness helps, specifically mantra meditation, helps us in getting relief from all these impurities, right? So it's very, very important. Therefore, yes, Ms. Priyanka, you had some.
I just want to add, I had read somewhere that if I'm not wrong, the Japanese people in the initial 3 years of the kids' education, they just introduce concepts like religion, manners, attitude, all that, basic. They don't teach them. So initial 3 years, they just focus the kids to learn the basics first, and then the education comes from the 4th standard. I had read somewhere. So this is what I think it should be implemented here also. So at least the kids, they listen to what is taught and then they put it into practice.
Yes, that's right. In
At
fact, in
least
the old,
yeah.
in fact, in the old Vedic system, in the Gurukula system, that was the case.
Yeah.
So it was not just skill building to earn a living, because what we are essentially doing is just learning skills to earn a living. That's it, right?
Yeah, correct.
Someone may sell vada pav at the street and earn a living also. That's also skill.
Yeah.
You may get an engineering degree and earn a living. Or someone may sell vada pav at the street and earn a living. At the end of it all, the goal is that I want to earn, right? So this very important factor of value-based education is what is lacking in today's society. And of course, we'll see what happens when so many other things are not taken care of in the coming verses. So these verses that we're going to look at in the next few verses are so crucial. In fact, they're a little sensitive also. I really wish if actually Vijay Madhav Prabhu was taking these verses. But yes, that is true. So the Vedic system of education was completely different. The Gurukula system was completely different. It was not just skill-based. Skills were also there. That was also important. And values were also of utmost importance. So one has to be like Arjuna. Arjuna was skilled. He was a wonderful, Kshatriya. He was a great archer. He had the skill. At the same time, he had a good character also. So 3 things we should emphasize on always, right? Character, competence, and culture. All 3 are needed. Okay, so going ahead then, so we saw that in this verse that actually because they were so overpowered with greed that they could not understand what they were doing and they were ready to kill everyone on the battle. Like Roji was mentioning last time, 64 crore people were there. They were ready to kill everyone for that matter, just because their heart was overpowered with greed. So that's a very, very important point here, right? On the other hand, as we saw, Arjuna was not like that. He was thoughtful. Every devotee is in fact thoughtful. Srila Prabhupada mentions in the lecture that every devotee is thoughtful of his actions. He does not just act by impetus, just by inner feeling or being driven by anger, greed, and so on. He's very, very thoughtful because he knows that whatever actions I'm doing is actually going to be looked at by so many people. And as a devotee, he should be very careful of his actions. Like that. So, and that is what exactly Arjuna is doing here. Okay. Yes. Yes.
So what I was thinking right now when we were discussing this, Yudhishthir, he was also gambling, right? Okay. He was a king, he was gambling, and he had the audacity to put his wife in that game. I cannot understand what was in his mind, whether it's a greed or the hypnosis of the game, because gambling is very addictive and all. But I cannot understand, even he was at mistake.
Okay,
Why? So in this shlok, when we are understanding about the greed, about the impurity, about the selfishness, he was also wrong putting his wife in that situation.
Yes, in particular to betting wife, I would also consult senior devotees. I do not have a correct understanding. But as far as greed
Okay,
is
okay, okay.
concerned, Yudhishthira Maharaj was not driven by greed. Actually, the Kshatriya principle that if anyone challenges you in fight or in gambling, you are supposed to accept it. You cannot deny it as a Kshatriya. So he took to gambling because he was challenged in gambling. And as a Kshatriya, you cannot deny. You cannot say no. When you're challenged for a fight, you cannot say no. Of course, that is one point. That's what I'm trying to say. That he was not driven by greed. That is for sure. Yes,
Not greed.
as far
Not
as
greed. I
yeah,
don't think so.
placing.
The circumstances forced him to do it.
Sorry.
Circumstances forced him to do it.
But putting his wife for betting is not circumstances.
Yeah.
You don't have brain.
They are
Putting
saying
your
no, the
wife in the
Kshatriya, they
gambling.
cannot go back on this thing fight. Is it
So
because of
certain,
that?
of course, we can. I'll consult senior devotees and get back about this
Because nobody
specifically.
forced him. I don't
But
think so anybody forced him
no one
to put
forced
his
him, but
wife
he
for
did not
betting.
put. He That was the only thing that was left. And at the same time, for pure devotees like
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
Pandavas, we may not look at them like they did something wrong. We need to understand it correctly. That's the only thing that is missing.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay.
That's
Okay.
we should be very careful of what disposition we have towards pure devotees because they are not ordinary. Just like Arjuna, now someone may say, "Oh, how can he be so much bewildered? He's a pure devotee." But Krishna put him into bewilderment, and that
Yeah.
was for our sake. This Bhagavad Gita is actually spoken for our sake. Arjuna is but
Hmm.
cannot be bewildered because he's a pure devotee. He's a friend of Krishna. But how is he? How is it that he's bewildered like this in the middle of the battlefield? It's only for our sake that actually Arjuna was bewildered, so that we get the message of Bhagavad Gita. So sometimes
Hmm.
the actions of pure devotees may not be understandable to us. It's
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
we need to get the correct understanding. But we should never ever think that they did something very wrong.
There's something wrong. Yeah. Yeah.
Just like many people say, "Oh, Krishna, he had so many wives. He was so lusty." Again, that's a
Oh,
very
okay. Hmm.
something. It's an incorrect concept completely.
Hmm.
As God, actually, what to speak of 16,000? He can have 16 million wives, and still he can satisfy everyone because every living entity has a relationship with the Supreme Lord.
Hmm.
And of course, there is a whole story of how the 16,000 wives were there.
And
So
they were
this
all, he was present at all of the palaces at the same
exactly,
time.
exactly.
Yeah.
So that
Yeah.
Yeah.
is
So
God.
that is God.
So
So,
so unless someone has that understanding, he will always uh, he may
Interpret in a
blaspheme
wrong
the
way.
Lord.
Interpreted in a wrong way. Yeah. Correct.
Exactly.
Correct.
So we should wait for getting that understanding and not reach conclusions. That is what I would suggest.
Hmm. Hmm. Cool.
So there were many who objected also, and objected in the sense were not happy with that kind. But also seemingly everyone who was learned also kept quiet. Now someone may say, how is it that Bhishma Pitama can keep quiet? How is it Dronacharya kept quiet when Draupadi was being stripped?
Hmm.
You know?
Hmm.
So of course, all of that in one sense in a reaction also comes here because the Mahabharata battle was fought and everyone that is what had to be killed.
Hmm.
So I'll still ask about Yudhishthir Maharaj's uh, whether it is right, wrong, how do we take and understand? I'll come back. But
Sure.
let's not reach conclusion and blame Yudhishthir Maharaj and say that he
Okay.
was incorrect.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's not appropriate attitude.
Yeah.
Okay, so next verse.
Yeah.
Kulashaye pranashyanti
Kulakshaye
Kulashaye
Pranashyanti
Paranshanti.
yastanti
Kulashaye pranashyanti
Kshaye
Kulashaye
prashastanti
Prashanti.
Pranashyanti
Prashanti.
Pranashyanti
pranashyanti
pralayansanti
kuladharma sanatanaha
Kula
adharma
Dharma
Kuladharmasanaha
Sanatana.
sanatana
dharme naste kulam kritsnam
Dharme
naste
nashte
kulam
Kula Krishnam.
prasam
adharmo
Kula
hi bhavati uta
abhibhavyuto
Adharma
Bhavati
Bhavati Yuta.
adharmo abhibhavati uta
Adharma
Bhavati
Abhavati Yuta.
adharmo bhavarti uta.
Can someone read the translation?
I'll read it.
Yes.
With the destruction of the dynasty, the eternal family tradition is vanquished, and thus the rest of the family becomes involved in irreligion.
Irreligion.
Yeah. So now Arjuna is arguing further. He's saying that if you kill everyone, then the dynasty is destroyed. And if the dynasty is destroyed, then the whole tradition, the religious traditions and things that were followed in the family are going to be destroyed. Will be vanquished. And then what will happen? Because if religious traditions are destroyed, then the family becomes involved in irreligion.
Yeah.
You see, it is a very logical argument. He's not just taking a decision to fight. He's thinking a lot. What is going to happen? All these people will die.
Yeah.
Because of that, dynasty will be destroyed. Because of that, family tradition will be destroyed. Because of that, people will become irreligious. And he's asking that to Krishna. Krishna is come to establish religion. Isn't that a very good argument? And if he sees that in the future this is going to lead to
Yeah.
religion, then why should we do this, right? So Prabhupada explains that the religious traditions that are performed, they are there to help the family grow properly and attain spiritual values. So the elders are responsible for this. That is what we see, in Indian culture specifically. There are so many traditions, religious formalities that we do. But unfortunately, the situation today is such that we do not know why we do what we do. They are done just for the sake of it. Or if because our elders did it, we do it. So we really don't have that core understanding. And this is what was foreseen by Arjuna, that this is going to happen in the future. And because people do not know the importance of it, then what happens is there'll be religion. They'll say, "Arey, ye sab rituals hai, iska koi matlab nahi hai." And there'll be so many movies that we made in Bollywood to explain why these rituals are, of no use. And then people also think, "Arey, wow, yes, this particular actor said in this movie that these rituals are of no use. This is Andhvishwas." And that is why then people will also feel, yes, that's true. This is Andhvishwas. These rituals are of no use. And so actually it's not so. So human form of life is actually meant for attaining spiritual realization and perfection. And for that, so many religious rituals and traditions were there. But because it is not followed in tradition, that has completely gone away now from the society. And no one knows what is done and why it is done. Srila Prabhupada mentioned in the lecture that the most important thing was the vanquishing of Putra. Putra means, what do we understand by the term Putra? Putra in Hindi or in Sanskrit means son, right? We call it Putra. So Putra, actually the word comes from Pun Namak Nam, Pun Namak, there is one hell. Okay, there is a hell called Pu. So Pum. So from that Pum Nam, Trayate Iti Putra. So one who delivers his forefathers from this hell called Pum is called Putra, which means a person actually in the Vedic system, he actually begets a son because he wishes that in the future, if at all, I get entangled in or go to the hellish planet, then my son will actually deliver me by performing different, traditions and religious activities. Just like, there is Shraddha ceremony, right? We offer food to the forefathers. So what is that? That is actually a tradition of offering the food to Lord Vishnu and then offering it to the forefathers. Why is that done? Because if Vishnu Prasad is given to the forefathers, then actually what will happen is even the forefathers who may have for whatever reason, sinful activities, if they are in hellish conditions, they will be delivered from there. So that was the duty of the Putra. So, and that was the whole idea for tradition, a family tradition to be followed. But today's society, no one is aware of this, right? So just man and one woman come, unite, and then they have children. They have no idea why they have children. What is the purpose of having children in the first place? And that again we'll see in the coming few verses. How the whole population gets polluted completely. That is
Prabhuji, when you said they have, vanished the tradition of Putra. What do you mean by that? Like they give importance, or I didn't understand that.
Yeah, so it means that the whole idea of having progeny, specifically son, is not understood today. People just have children today without an understanding of why there should be children. So as it said, putra means one who delivers his forefathers from the sinful actions. Okay. And that is why it was said that, before you die, you should have a putra, which means that, if you are stuck in hellish conditions because of your sins, your son will deliver you.
So the daughter can't deliver,
Daughter can also deliver. So we'll see
but
what
there
it
would be
is.
some other tradition related to daughter.
Exactly. And for that matter, for devotees, how does it apply? Because we'll see in the coming verses, even the Shraddh ceremony for those who are performing devotional service is not of utmost importance, provided we are completely surrendered unto the Lord. So we'll come,
Got
all of
it.
that will come in the coming verses. But the whole idea is, it is not like animal society where animals come, unite, give birth to children. Human form of life is not like that. That is the idea. But it has
Yeah.
become like that. It has become like animal system, that eat, sleep, mate, defend. That's all. So that's animal life, right? Human form of life is thoughtful. It's every activity. Putra, the word itself has a meaning. We do not know, right? So every word has a meaning in that sense. So these religious traditions that were there, they were meant for a purpose, to elevate everyone spiritually, keep their consciousness intact. Rather, what's happening today is there are no traditions being followed, and the consciousness of the people is going downward. For everything that they are exposed to in society today. So we'll read the coming few verses. We'll understand even more. Even more things that are going to be mentioned here. Okay. So this is verse number 40. Adharmabhibhavat Krishna.
Dharma Bhivat Krishna.
Adharma Krishna.
Adharmabhibhavat Krishna.
Dharma Bhivat
Adharma
Krishna.
Bhivatma Krishna.
Pradushyanti kula striyaha.
Dusyanti
Pradushayanti Kulastriya.
Striya.
Strishu dushtashu varshneya.
Rishu Drushtasu
Dusta Tasu
Vashvaya.
Strishu
Vasudha.
dushtashu varshneya.
Rishi
Rishu
Drishtatu Vashmeya.
Dudastu Vasnaya.
Jayate varna shankaraha.
Jayate
Jayate
Varna
Varashankara.
Sankara.
Okay, would someone like to read the translation? Can someone read the translation?
So shall I?
Yes, please.
When irreligion is prominent in the family, O Krishna, the woman of the family becomes polluted, and from the degradation of womanhood, or descent of Varshni, comes unwanted fragrance.
Progeny. Yeah, O descendant of Vrishni comes unwanted progeny. So in the previous verse, he said that family traditions are destroyed, people will become irreligious. And now he's going further. He's saying when irreligion becomes prominent in family, then women of the family become polluted. And from the degradation of womanhood, there comes unwanted progeny. So he's going further to describe how the population in general becomes, degraded or polluted, or not very elevated in their consciousness, and that happens because of women getting polluted. How do they become polluted? So Arjuna was seeing what will happen now. Everyone is going to die in the battle. Who's fighting in the battle? The Kshatriyas. When they are killed, their wives will actually be without any husbands, and because there'll be no Kshatriyas, who will take over the ruling? They'll be taken over by other people who are not qualified Kshatriyas. And then what will they do? They will exploit the woman, because now they are without any protection. And because the woman will be, polluted, then that will give rise to unwanted progeny. That is what is called as Varna Shankara. So now he's giving further argument. This is going to happen. So Prabhupada actually, in the lecture in this verse particularly, he stresses the importance of chastity of a woman. A woman is supposed to be very, very chaste, which means she's supposed to be very faithful to her husband. And if that does not happen in society, then what will happen is she'll be polluted, and then that will result to unwanted progeny. And generally, if that happens in society, then the population becomes such that there can be no peace, prosperity, or any spiritual practice going on. If the population by and large becomes like that, that has come from a polluted woman like that. So the chastity of a woman is very, very important, and it's very much stressed in the Vedic system. And in fact, from the very childhood, the woman would be, taught to become chaste to her husband. That when you grow up, you need to be chaste. That was, the foremost qualification that a woman was taught. And Prabhupada gave many, many examples for this matter. And we see so many such chaste women who are there in the traditions also, like Gandhari. Gandhari was a very, very chaste woman. She was the wife of Dhritarashtra. But when she came to know that, Dhritarashtra, I'm going to marry a husband who's going to be blind, she herself blinded herself, just to practice in that same way. So she was very chaste and faithful to her husband. In fact, Dhritarashtra wanted the battle, but Gandhari was objecting to it. She was saying that we should not have the battle, rather let's just split the kingdom. But of course, she followed. She was not in control. She was not ruling. And of course, Dhritarashtra was also overtaken by, his attachment to Duryodhan. So Duryodhan just did not want any compromise like that. So there are many such examples of chaste women in the scriptures. Prabhupada mentions one such example of Nala and Damayanti. So Damayanti happened to be the wife of a king, and he was a king, but a time came such in their life that actually he became very poverty stricken. So much poverty had come about that actually they had no clothes to wear. They had one piece of cloth, and that also was shared between the husband and wife. And although she was herself a daughter of a king, she did not, divorce the husband, saying that, oh, I was a daughter of a king. Now I've married this king, but this king has become so poor that there are no clothes to wear. There was no question of separation. So Prabhupada mentions this example of Damayanti, that she was so chaste that irrespective of the poor condition of her husband, she did not think of any separation from the husband. She was faithfully following him and cooperating with him. So that is very, very important again. Then Prabhupada mentions another incident that he saw in Bombay in the year 1934-35, where he saw that on the street there was a lady who was carrying, or along with her husband, who was deformed, because probably he met with an accident or something, was completely deformed, the man, and yet she was faithfully with him and begging for money. So Prabhupada said that this man probably met with an accident, and although he had practically he could not do anything, his body was completely deformed, yet because she was his wife, she did not leave him. It was a duty to bring him, beg some money so that they could sustain themselves, and then continue like that. So then Prabhupada also gives another story of another woman, a disciple of Ramanujacharya. Now Ramanujacharya is one of the wonderful Vaishnava acharyas in the Sri Sampradaya. So once he happened to visit the home of his disciple, Ramanujacharya went to the home of his disciple. But when he went there, he knocked and he saw that actually there's no one in the home, and he was wondering, how is it so? My disciples are grihasthas, they are like householders. Why is it that there is no one at their home? So when he tried to go inside, he saw the door was open. He entered and he saw there was a room, the door was closed, and but there was no one responding. So he immediately realized that actually the wife is there in the home, and they are so poor that actually she doesn't even have proper clothes to wear. Then realizing this, Ramanujacharya, what he did was he gave his own clothes to her. He passed on the clothes in the room, and then she wore the clothes and then she came out. and she saw that her guru Ramanacharya had come, and therefore she, offered obeisances, and she wanted to serve him because Guru had himself come, to her home. So what she did was she went to the grocery shop to get some grains, ghee, and so that she can cook something, because their condition was so poor that she did not have anything at home properly. So she went to the grocery shop, and this person who was the owner of the shop, he knew that this woman is very, very poor. And because he knew that she was very poor, he would always try and entice her. And he had a desire that he wanted to enjoy with this woman. But this woman never, ever, uh, you know, uh, gave in to his demands. She was very, very chaste and faithful to her husband. But on that day, she said that, uh, she said to the owner of the shop, she said that, I want some grains and ghee and things like that because I have to serve my guru. And if you want, uh, I'll come and meet you in the evening and satisfy your demands. But please give me some grains and things so that I can serve my guru. So he was happy. He was like, wow, I always proposed to her, but she never came. And now she has come today. So he gave whatever she wanted, grains, ghee, whatever she wanted, he gave her. And then she took all of these grains and she served her guru, Maharaj Ramanacharya, very, very nicely. And when the husband came home, he saw this his wife is serving Ramanacharya so nicely with such wonderful grains and food that she had cooked. And he was wondering, how is it that she arranged all of this? So after the guru left, he asked her, how did you arrange all of this? So she explained the whole story, that she went to the grocery shop and she promised that she will go and meet. So the husband said, now you have promised him, now you go and meet the grocery shop owner and take some prasad for him. So she actually went there, faithfully. And when the grocery shop owner heard this, and her faithfulness to her husband and her desire to serve the guru, the grocery shop owner's heart completely changed. He said that, okay, I don't want to enjoy with you in any way. In fact, whatever you want from my shop, you take away. So I have nothing, no business to do like that with you. So his heart was completely transformed looking at the faithfulness and chastity of this woman. So Prabhupada explains through many different examples why having chaste women is very, very important in society. Because if that's not the case, then the whole population gets degraded in one way. There is Varna Shankara, or unwanted progeny, that takes place in the society, and that is not very good to keep a good balance system in society. There is no proper spiritual upliftment or good community projects or anything that will happen in a nice peaceful manner. Okay? So that's an important lesson from this verse. This is again a very, very sensitive topic. Are there any reflections or questions on anything that we discussed here?
I have a question.
Yes.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So I don't want to come across as a negative person, but I want to put across my thoughts which are coming in my mind. And I completely agree about being faithful and being pure. But if you look at today's society, there are men who themselves don't know how to behave with their wives.
Perfect.
And there is no point
That's
of staying with that person. So while I understand being faithful with your husband, there should be love, compassion, partnership, togetherness. But at the same time, in 21st century, I am not someone who will just keep on having all those unwanted injustice or disrespect. And eventually I'm going to leave, or eventually I'm going to dissatisfied physically, mentally, emotionally. In that, how do you then differentiate? How do you then put it across this shlok?
So
being faithful to husband, or being stick to husband even in a very bad situation or even a worse situation. I hope I am putting across my point clearly.
Yes. So
see, I'm single, so I'm scared, like, who would be my husband, if he would be faithful to me, because nowadays I don't trust any guy because of a very bad breakup of 10 years long relationship. So now this shlok is creating conflict for me,
Right.
So so
So,
that's my thought.
okay, so first we should understand the general principle of how things should be. The, the, the society today in 21st century, as you rightly mentioned, is very topsy-turvy. And that has happened because of all of the previous things. You know, the whole family tradition being destroyed. And that is why we're in a precarious situation today. This had all not happened had all of this been maintained nicely in the previous generations.
Generation after
Problem
generation.
is that it did not happen. That is why we are in such a situation today that we have no idea what to do, what is religious life, how it should be performed, and therefore we are in a very, very difficult situation. So in principle, we should understand that this is what is desirable. Okay, there could be exceptions to cases, and undoubtedly Prabhupada also mentions in the purport that there are men who in fact who do not take any responsibility, and they may also be they will surely be also be responsible for polluting women. So it's not that only women are, you know, it's necessity that they remain faithful to the husband. It's also the responsibility of the man to take care of the woman. So both is there. You know, it's not just the woman's role. But yes, the woman should in general also understand their responsibility and faithfulness that they need to have towards a man. So the examples that specifically Prabhupada gave when I spoke of the stories are of very difficult situations, like, you know, husband being in poverty. So the woman does not leave him just because he's in poverty. Okay, that's the idea. Of course, the particular situation and case may be, you know, different, and there could be exception. That's another thing. But I'm talking about, you know, general. I mean, specifically the Prabhupada examples that he gave were more towards this. That, you know, even in difficult situations, women did not leave the husband just because it was a difficult situation. And in fact, like, she was the daughter of a king, and although she was in such Damayanti was in such a difficult situation in poverty, she did not give up the husband because of that, just because of that, right? Because one meets his his or her destination. So
Yeah.
it's not that today the society is such, I cannot satisfy you, cannot satisfy me, let's divorce. So it's very, very, the whole basis of coming together is on a very tottering platform. It's like attraction, physical attraction, and that will not last. So if the
Yeah.
basis of coming together is on a tottering platform, then it's surely going to fall apart. It's like, so there are many more things. This is a very deep topic, and it's very sensitive also. um, so uh, General principle we should understand, this is the case. How we can apply it in our lives will vary from person to person, but we should know that this is the standard of Vedic civilization. Today's society in general, yes, as you correctly said, is very topsy-turvy. We will have to
Yeah.
be careful of
Yeah.
you know many different factors. But therefore, at least in the Krishna conscious society, as Prabhupada created in ISKCON, so women are given a lot of respect. And that is how it was in the Vedic system also. That is why we address each other as Mataji. I mean, the men address the women as Mataji, which means that he is giving utmost respect to women. But that is completely changed in today's society. In fact, there is exploitation, and
Yeah.
so a lot of things are happening like that. So the society today is very much different, but we should, in the circle of devotees, we should try and follow as much as possible the Vedic principles of living, and dealing with each other. So
Prabhuji,
yes.
also maybe in this particular shlok, it is mentioned about the women. You know, basically they mean that be there for each other in difficult situations so that the irreligion doesn't come to the society, and the unwanted children and all those activity doesn't happen. So it is very specifically mentioned, those those examples that you given, that
Mhm.
be there with each other for men and women in the difficult situations like disease or poverty,
Right.
or not the other parts. Other things are not even discussed or talked about because I think it wasn't there that time. So
They could have
basically,
been, yeah, I completely agree. There could have been a lot different situation that time, and it's today now we're living in Kali Yuga, so it's going to even get worse.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
so the situation very difficult. Therefore, but when we only read and understand the scriptures, will we understand what's the platform of where I'm supposed to live? When we don't have knowledge only, it's going to be chaotic. It's very obvious. It's very, very obvious. It's not something very surprising that we are seeing today, because general understanding of religious principles is not there.
Yeah.
People come together on a very
But
bodily platform.
I remember that, untaught, taught, it was always there being a girl, that you have to be faithful. And it is somewhere ingrained that, because it has been passed on, that faithful thing is, the core. I think
Right.
that was passed from generation to generation.
Right. And
To some
in Vedic
people, yeah.
society, it was also the responsibility of the men to ensure protection given to the women.
Yeah.
So if you see, the
Yeah.
woman was generally always taken and protected in her childhood and upbringing by her father, then later by her husband, and after that by her elderly sons, if the husband was not there. So women was completely given protection like that. But that is changed now completely. And of course, now women want independence, and there is feminism. That's again a very different topic. So
Yeah.
it's again very sensitive.
Yeah.
But in the name of all of that, then what happens is, then men take advantage of it and exploit women, and then there's chaos in society. So again, that is a completely different topic. We can maybe talk about that in details at a later stage.
I think
But
it
I hope,
completely depends upon how people are interpreting each thing, Every person is interpreting it in their own way. So that's why, everybody's coming to their own conclusions and own benefits and own stuff.
yeah. So Vedic system had a proper culture of how women should be in society, how men should be in society, and if you follow that, then there would not be so many problems. But that culture is not there anymore, and that has degraded like anything.
Even the
So
knowledge is not there, like how we
even
are
the knowledge is
understanding
not there.
right now, how
Yeah,
we are understanding now, we can relate.
yeah. We
Now
can
many,
relate.
not all are joining these classes, so they will be
Correct.
unaware
Correct.
for the life, entire life.
Correct. And sometimes we are gaining at whatever age we are in. Some of us are 30, 40, 20, whatever, at a different point in our life. We have first time probably heard of something like this, so had we probably heard this much earlier, things, our life would have been a lot different today.
Yeah,
We
yeah,
would have tried to live a life completely differently.
absolutely.
So all knowledge is there. It's complete science. This is not some uh, like they say, mythology of the past, not applicable in 21st century. In fact, this is even more relevant today because of the chaotic situation today. So although Arjuna is like a Kshatriya, he had such in-depth knowledge and a perfect understanding of culture that he's bringing all these points now before the battle begins. How
Prabhuji,
systematic.
it's also mentioned in the last line. It's not only about the female. It is also said
Yeah,
irresponsible men
right, right.
also provoke
I
adultery in the society.
yeah.
Yeah.
If you heard, I mentioned this, that there will be men who will provoke adultery also, irresponsible men, because that is what, when Prabhupada was here on the planet, he saw that happening a lot in the West. That men who are irresponsible, they would provoke adultery. Then women will be left with a child, and the government will then have to support the woman with her child. So he saw a lot of this happening, and again, at this constantly there was freedom for women and equal rights for women and all of that was coming. So Prabhupada would have huge arguments, and sometimes that was not taken very well by the interviewers and the more modern thought process. People do not take it very nicely. But again, as I said, that's a very different topic we can discuss in detail. But if you'll have some queries, still I could try and answer to a certain extent. But this is how it was, generally. So in Vedic system, women were given complete protection, and that was very, very essential. Uh, and that does not mean that they were looked down or they had an inferior position. It's not like that. In fact, women were given a lot of respect. And Prabhupada mentions in a lecture that a chaste woman is actually full of energy for her husband, and she, just by being chaste, she is actually giving so much energy and protecting the family and the tradition and the children who are there in the family. So many things happen just because a woman nicely takes care. And we can see probably from our lives also, our parents, how they have taken care of us. I think most cases everyone will agree that the way our parents, especially the mother, has taken so much care of us in such a wonderful way that we cannot replace that. But are we in that state to also do for our children and in the future? Again, we think differently now. Generation has completely changed. So some points that we should try and meditate upon, and also think how we can apply in our lives. Okay, anything
I
before we
have
go?
one question.
Yeah.
I have one question.
Yeah.
I was just trying to understand this, that is irreligion completely linked to womanhood and chastity? Is it one of the reasons,
It's one
or
of the
is it
reasons. No,
one of
it's
the reasons?
one of the reasons.
And how do we prevent this? Is it anywhere covered that how do we prevent this? While being faithful is a two-way street, both has to be faithful to each other. But
Yes,
how
both
do we
have to be
prevent?
faithful. Yeah.
Yes. So how do we prevent this from happening? Is it covered anywhere?
So just like I mentioned, women were given all protection in the previous ages in the Vedic society, and that is a very important factor, which is probably not there today at all. Uh, uh, so the father is supposed to protect the child, the daughter. The husband is supposed to protect the wife.
The wife.
Similarly, elder children are supposed to protect their mother. So this sense of protection is now become very, very dilute today, because the modern thinking parents, they generally allow their children to freely move around, without giving much protection to them, because probably very often the parents have themselves been very free, and they have freely interacted with,
Right.
the if men have freely interact with women and women have freely interacted with men. That was not the case earlier. It was very restrained, and it was, if at all it was there, it was under like the purview of the parents. So things are very different today. So protection for women is very, very important. I mean, they also need to be taught from the childhood about chastity, about being faithful. So which again is not there today. It is completely absent, in fact. Parents are not teaching that to the children in general.
Yes. Yes.
So there are things like that. Protection is an important element. Teaching chastity is an important element. In fact, in ISKCON society, there are many Grihastha Matajis who are there, and they in fact provide guidance of how this can be practiced very practically in today's society. And some of them have been very Western thinkers and lived in Western society, and yet they think very traditionally today. So we can take guidance from them also. But generally, the principles are that woman was taught to be chaste to the husband, and to take care of the family in general. That was an important education. Uh, they were trained in this from their parents, themselves. So that is what is lacking, I feel, to a large extent today.
Okay. Thank you.
Does that answer, or is there more?
Yes, more or less it answers. Thank you.
Okay. So training is very important to
Yeah, I think
train.
educating from day one is
is
important.
important, right? So that is very, very important. The education system today is a lot different. I'm myself into an education institute, and it's a lot different. I see children, I'm teaching children who are age 14, 15, 16, 13. It's a very difficult situation today, very difficult.
Yes, absolutely. Agreed.
And I try to, as much as possible, sometimes in where I'm teaching, I try to bring up certain principles to them. But again, children are so much surrounded with their peers who are probably not of the same thought process, and once they grow after a certain age of 13, 14, they're more influenced by their peers. And so there is a whole education system that is there in the Vedic scriptures, of how up till 5 years you need to be very gentle with the children. After 5 years, then you need to be firm. Then after that, at the age of 15, you need to be more friendly with the children. So there is a whole education system in itself, in how you, bring up children. So again, that's again a very detailed topic. But essentially, if we, instead of teaching them stories that that are there in the books, textbooks, and so on, if we teach them stories from the scriptures, and bring to them in front of them the right role models, then that will also help a lot. Because role models, we will have someone or the other in our life. They may be sports personalities, sometimes film personalities, actors, actresses. If they become their role models, then it's going to take them in a completely different direction, because their lifestyle is completely different. And if that is what children look at or learn from. Sometimes parents are not there to take care of the children because both parents are working at home. They're not there at home, they're working. So then again, very precarious situation. Children are, taken care of by the TV, internet, or some maid servant. Again, a difficult situation. So it's a large topic, but there are many contributing factors.
Yes, true. Agree.
Okay, it's 12:20 already. Are there any more questions or reflections? Because again, as I said, it's a little sensitive, this topic, and at the same time, very important also. Should we go to the next verse and take this one more verse?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Yes.
Okay. Shankaro narakayaiva
Shankaro
Shank.
Narakaiva
kulagnanam kulasya cha
Kulagnanam kulasya cha
patanti pitarahi yesham
patanti pitro hosham hesham
patanti pitarahi yesham
patantri pitro hesham
lupta pindo daka kriyaha.
Lupta
lupta pindo dako kriya.
Okay, can someone read the translation?
An increase of unwanted population certainly causes hellish life, both for the family and for those who destroy the family tradition. The ancestors of such corrupt families fall down because the performances for offering them food and water are entirely stopped.
Yeah, so Arjuna is continuing. Okay, now there's unwanted population. What will happen? Because of that, there'll be hellish life for family. It will destroy the tradition. Ancestors, those who have passed away, they will fall down because there is no one offering them food and water, which was a custom, like we discussed the Shraddh ceremony, right? So that tradition is also not there. So ancestors will also suffer now because of that. So generally, Prabhupada mentioned in the purport that those who are devotees and who are completely surrendered, so he quotes this verse from the Srimad Bhagavatam, Devarshi bhutaptaninam pitrinam naking karonayam rinisharajan sarvatmana ye sharanam sharanyam gato mukundam pariharta kartyam. So this verse says that anyone who has taken shelter of the lotus feet of Mukunda, Mukunda is Krishna, the giver of liberation, giving up all kinds of obligation and has taken to the path of, in all seriousness, owes neither duties nor obligations to the demigods, sages, general living entities, family members, humankind, forefathers, anyone. Which means this verse says that if someone who's taken to devotional service completely, fully surrendered himself, then he does not have any obligations. So what does that mean? Does that mean that we generally have obligations? Yes. So like it says, Devarshi Bhutapta Nrinam Pitrinam. So Devas are who? Demigods. So we are getting the sun, the sunlight is there. Do we pay any fee for the sunlight? Like we pay some fee for the electricity, but sunlight, do we pay? No. We get air, we get water. Do we pay any fees for it? No. We are freely taking it. But that doesn't make us free from the obligation we owe towards these demigods who are providing us with heat, water, and so on. So we have some obligation towards the devtas. Then similarly, there are obligation towards sages. Sages, those who have provided us with this wonderful knowledge in the Vedic scriptures and who are passing this knowledge to us. We have obligation towards them. We have obligations towards the family members. We have obligations towards our pitra, which means the forefathers. So we have obligation to so many people, and therefore there were so many different responsibilities and duties that one had to perform towards them. But this verse particularly says that if someone has taken shelter of the Supreme Lord, completely, he is completely fully surrendered to Lord Krishna, then automatically, he doesn't have to, he doesn't therefore have any more obligation towards any of these personalities, because that is automatically fulfilled. Srila Prabhupada in fact mentions that if one person becomes a devotee in the family, then that person who has become a devotee, a pure devotee of the Lord, in fact relieves all his forefathers, not just one, hundreds and thousands of forefathers become liberated just because that one person in the family has become a pure devotee of the Lord. That is the strength of pure devotional service. So the same thing had happened with Prahlad Maharaj. Prahlad Maharaj, you all know, right? The story of Prahlad. He was a small boy. He had a father. His name was Hiranyakashipu. He was a demon. Yeah, he was a demon, Hiranyakashipu.
Yes.
And but he was a very powerful demon. All over the planets, he had complete control. Even the demigods were under him. He could control even the demigods. Of course, not Lord Vishnu and Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva, but other demigods were under his control. He was so powerful. Despite the fact that he was so powerful, he was not at peace. You know why? Because his own son did not obey him. His son Prahlad said Lord Vishnu is God, and he was like, he thought himself to be God. So he was very unhappy with his son, and therefore he made so many attempts to kill his own son. Again, what do we see here? Envy. So because of envy and greed and so-called, he wanted honor from his own son also, although he had control of everyone else. It made him so mad that he wanted to kill his own son, again overpowered. So but eventually, of course, that did not happen, and Narsimdev appeared, the half lion half man incarnation of the Supreme Lord, and he killed Hiranyakashipu. And after he killed Hiranyakashipu, he said, what do you want? Because Prahlad was a great devotee of the Lord. So Prahlad said that, oh Lord, I do not want anything. I just want that my father be delivered, be liberated. So Lord Vishnu or Narsimhadev said, what to speak of your father 11 generations ahead, after everyone is liberated, just because you have become a pure devotee. So that's a special position of devotional service to the Supreme Lord. It frees us from all obligations, but of course, there is a condition, one who is completely surrendered. We are
Prabhuji,
yeah.
even Krishna told him and gave him the blessing that from all the generations of your further, whosoever is a demon in your kul, I will not be able to kill them. I will not kill them. I will not be able, I will not kill them. That was also given to him. Yeah.
Yes. So that's the strength of pure devotional service. Someone who becomes a pure devotee of the Lord. So, and we are on that path. So, there were many questions through the class that what do we do today? Situation is very bad. It's chaotic. The best thing that we can do today is practice devotional service, because that will give us intelligence how to, behave in different circumstances, how to apply these teachings. And when we are in a prayerful mood, we pray to the Lord to guide us, then he will do so. And of course, at the same time, we can take guidance from senior devotees also. Like that. Okay, it's already 12:30. Are there any last questions or comments or anything that we want to discuss?
No.
Okay. So if you'll have any questions that you think you couldn't get proper answers to, you can again ask Vijay Madhav Prabhu hopefully next week. And if there is anything that you throughout the week you come across, certain questions come to your mind, please note them and you can maybe ask them in the next class. Okay. So if there are no questions, then we'll just do short kirtan and then we'll stop. Okay. Because in the course of the class, we had many questions. I hope it's okay. If there are any questions at all, we'll discuss them, else we'll start with kirtan.
I just have one request, Prabhuji.
Yes.
If the chanting of verses can be shared, I mean, only the way you are chanting can be shared with us, it'll help, because we're all together chanting and at times we hardly can hear you because of the network issue.
Okay.
Is that a...
Yeah, so I can try and do
separately?
No, what we can, so I can mute all when I chant the verses, so you all can hear clearly.
Yes.
And,
yes.
Yeah,
maybe.
I understand.
That's
because
just
of
a
the,
request.
Yes, I completely understand. So we'll try and do that next time onwards. Whenever we recite the verse, we'll mute all the participants. You can recite, but you may not be audible to others, because sometimes that's creating a because there's a lag. It's not properly heard by everyone. So yes, we can try and follow that. Anything else?
Thank you.
So there are weekly sessions also taking place for helping reading the Bhagavad Gita simultaneously along with these sessions. I hope everyone is belonging to a group. And,
unfortunately, I've not been able to join those groups because of my schedule and all. So I was
Okay.
thinking if I can listen to these recorded, then it'll help also at the same time.
So these sessions are weekly basis. The recordings of these are also there. Apart from that, weekly readings are only to help. I mean, you can read at your own pace and time whenever it suits you. But this is only so that because we get busy in our schedules. If we come together as a group, then it will happen. Sometimes it's not happening for whatever reasons. So it's okay. If,
It's not happening actually for our group. It's
So if
not
you'd like
happening
to
at
join a
all
group-
for our group.
Oh, not the group. Oh, okay. What is the group number or name?
Mr. Subramaniam is there with me. I know Chitra ma'am is there
Okay,
also.
okay. I understand which group this is. So we can we
Nakul,
fix
now
the
we got into Nakul group. No?
Nakul group, right? So we.
I think even I have a problem, because I'm working from home and phone calls keep coming and all that. Sometimes we are not able to.
Yes, absolutely.
That's
Yes.
the main problem.
If we can fix